Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. ADHD and even ADD, more and more people than ever are being diagnosed with it. And I'm even hearing in my circles, people, I'm talking adults, they could be, 50 and realize that they have ADHD. And now they're learning to navigate it. And there's all different ways to do that. We're going to dig deeper into that today and much more with a psychologist that helps people all the time with this and so much more. Dr. Roger Lavine is back with us on the program. Hey, Roger, how are you?
I'm doing well, and yourself, Steve?
I'm well, thanks. Something called, I think it's time blindness related to ADHD. What exactly is time blindness?
Well, it's where we lose track of time. You'll find that people with ADHD will sometimes miss a commitment because they completely lost track of time. They're late for appointments. And it even plays a little bit bigger into the role of them succeeding because they don't feel future reward. Like if you talk to an eighth grade ADHD student about his whole life falling apart because he's not doing well at school, he can't really emotionally get in touch with the consequences of that. And the same with rewards. So that's why people with ADHD have some trouble with bigger projects like in school or at work, where the reward is down the road or the consequences are down the road.
Can we look at that? Really, what you're saying, Roger, is so impactful. So I want to take the microscope and just open it up. When you talk about the reward, let's say somebody in an average situation will say, oh, okay, I go to school. I need to be in school. I need to do well because at the back end, I'll graduate and move on to a good job. We'll go in your example. Student has ADHD. Why don't they see the reward?
Well, that's just the problem. It causes the confusion is that they see the reward intellectually, right? So the part of their brain that has knowledge is fine. But the emotional part of their brain, which feels the reward, doesn't feel a reward in the future because there's no spot in their brain for it. In other words, neurotypicals, you can think of, they kind of have an area in their brain where they put future events. And it's subconscious. And say you schedule going out with a friend this Friday, and Friday afternoon, all of a sudden the thought will pop into your head, hey, I got to wrap this up because I'm going to go out to dinner tonight. Well, someone with ADHD doesn't have that whiteboard, with that space to put that event. So consequently, because it doesn't exist in their brain, they neither can feel the reward or the consequences of that happening.
Is that a common situation for people with ADHD? That just the reward
very
is
common.
Wow, I never knew that. How interesting.
Well, there's all kinds of consequences from this. Like in relationships, you'll know that you're having trouble with this if you keep missing commitments, right? You really intend to make it, but you either overcommit so you don't make it, or it completely escapes your mind. Very, very common. Well, after a while, most relationships get tired of that. And then there's a big financial cost. You intend to buy the tickets at a lower cost, but you don't get to it, so you end up paying the higher price. Or you may even miss an event that you paid for because it wasn't real to you. So there's big financial cost to it, and it can underpin why people fail at school, because once they go from just short stuff they could do in a couple hours in the evening to bigger projects without the ability to track future rewards and consequences, they're going to be in trouble.
Wow, all of this stuff. I'm so happy we're talking about it because I never realized it. I do get that there's confusion in terms of navigating different things, and somebody with ADHD, the focus challenge. But all of this is huge. Let's talk about the time challenge, where they just can't keep track of time.
Yeah, so there's two areas that require different tools. There's immediate time. I'll call it time nearsightedness rather than blindness, right? We're not completely oblivious to time. It's just they can only see what's immediately in front of them. So there it falls under quite often the problem becomes hyper focus. Say they get really involved in a project and they get so involved that they lose track of time.
Okay.
And next thing you know, it's 2 a.m. and they haven't gone to bed, and they wake up the next day kind of a mess, but they didn't realize that 4 or 5 hours had passed.
Or they have something, and I just experienced this with somebody who does have ADHD, where they said 2 hours earlier in a text, they said, well, yeah, if I'm making plans this afternoon, I got to pick up my daughter at this certain time. So 2 hours later, I'm texting and said, okay, well, if we're going to do that, get together, whatever, you have to pick up your daughter in the middle of the day. So that's going to break up the day. And she wrote back, oh, I totally forgot about that. So losing track of the time. Yeah.
And that becomes the actual scheduling problem is a little different. But you're absolutely right. She lost track of the time, and it's because she either got hyper focused on what she was doing, or the other thing is you lose connection to time itself. So there's a whole bunch of little tricks.
Wow.
To do that. I saw an interesting video from a person who compared it to being in Las Vegas. In Las Vegas, they deliberately want you to lose track of time so you stay in the casino.
Point is you'll never see a clock in a casino.
Exactly. So you do just the opposite of what they do in a casino. You have a lot of eye-level clocks, analog clocks, so you can see a quarter of a pie disappearing as time goes by. Digital clocks, you'll know what time it is, but it won't give you a sense of how much time passed. So you want to make sure you always have clocks everywhere. You lose track of time because you lose track of the cycle. You know how with COVID, everybody's lost track of the day of the week because every day blends into another because there's no cycle anymore. Well, in casinos, they don't have windows, right? So you want to make sure that you're in an environment where you see the time pass. With the light comes up, the shadow changes. All these things play on us subconsciously to let us know time is passing, right? So even down to the kind of music we play. And I have people that have so much trouble with losing track of time. I have them set an alarm every hour so that they know 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours have passed. Otherwise, they'll never know if they get into their hyper pass.
Why don't calendars work, or do they work?
Well, I think, first of all, every calendar out there is built for a neurotypical, not an ADHD person, right?
True. Yes.
So there's a couple problems with ADHD people. Back to this issue, I got to remember to do something on my calendar, right? Or I got to remember to put it in, or it's on my calendar and I have to know to look at my calendar. And most of them are way too complicated. So every client I get tells me that they've tried a zillion calendars, and essentially I've developed a very simple system for them, a simple calendar.
So this is your calendar that you came up with?
Well, it's a technique of using a calendar, right? So what gets in the way is, first of all, we're not terribly motivated to maintain a calendar, right? I mean, it's a big pain in the neck, right? So it's got to be simple and easy. And then the part where we don't think of it has to be managed with routine. So basically, my calendar system, we approach it by developing the discipline and routine to check your calendar in the morning and then check again at night and plan for the next day. Because lots of times the problem is we'll show up for something and we won't have what we need to do it because we haven't, if you have ADHD, you're not going to think ahead. You're not going to make sure that everything you need is there. So by having the routine twice a day, 5 minutes a day, it becomes not a big task, but you're going to do it. And then the second thing, it has to be immediate. So I prefer to use a calendar on your phone so that anytime you make any commitment to anybody, you can immediately put it on your calendar.
And I have to agree with you. And I like to say I'm a tech geek. Even Google Calendar, as easy as it is, I don't have ADHD. I don't think I do. But like a lot of times I'm challenged in putting events in because I want to go quicker. It's like, why? All right, I got to click this, click that, click that. It should be even more intuitive to just drop an event in there and make it faster. So I see what you're saying.
So what I do with people is have them, first of all, recognize you're not going to get more than 5 things done in a day. So don't worry about managing more than 5 things. You're going to be lucky if you get 3 things done, right? At first, that's always a battle. Oh, no, I do 20 things. I said, if you really think about it, if you get 3 to 5 things done that you intend to get done on any given day, you're probably ahead of the game, right? So instead of scheduling them throughout the calendar and putting times and alarms and all the complications people do, I just have them use the all day or early morning slot and just put them in as a text string. So like this, this particular podcast I have on my calendar because it's a regular event at 11 o'clock. But on Sunday nights, on Sunday, I put on a task prepare for the podcast, right? That's all I put. And I don't put a specific time on it because Sunday morning when I review, I can, pretty much figure out when I'm going to get to it that day. And I do it because we're nearsighted, meaning that I can pretty well plan 2 days. But if you ask me what I'm doing Friday, it's not going to happen. So the key is a very simple calendar system. And if anybody is interested, I do have a video. It's only 8 minutes long because we are ADHD, right? So an 8-minute video on how to manage a calendar if you have ADHD. And they can get a hold of me at drlavine.com. And I'll be glad to send that little video clip along on how to use your Google or Apple or any calendar you have in a simple and easy way.
I want to ask this related to everything that we're talking about, but people who are diagnosed with ADHD, do they, a lot of them, find a way to master this at some point? And let's go to the basics as well. 2-part question here. If you don't know you have ADHD, but you have problems focusing on all this stuff and keeping schedules and things, where do you go? What's your next step there?
Well, I think the first question is, do people who have ADHD master it? No, they compensate, right? So,
okay.
All right, I have trouble with a college education. So I get a job where everything's immediate. Like I become an electrician or a plumber because I don't, every rewards and consequences are in the immediate moment, right? So I'm a successful plumber. Now I'm not doing my billing work, right, that I need to do because it's boring. So how do I compensate? I, of course, try to find somebody to do my billing for me, right? And now I'm having trouble because now I'm not making it to my appointments with all the supplies I need, right? So now I buy a bigger truck and I put everything humanly possible on the truck. So people find ways of compensating. The only question is, are those the most effective ways of doing it? And what am I giving up when I do that? Do I really want a big oversized truck? Do I really want to be a plumber? Those kinds of
Sure.
questions. So they kind of survive their ADHD in a lot of ways.
It's almost like there's a roadblock and you're going around it, but invariably there's more work involved. So that I have to imagine that leads to even more stress on somebody that has ADHD, because now they're thinking of how do I compensate for that? Well, I can go around this way. I got it that way. Where for the general population, I guess I could just put it in my phone, get a reminder. But even I get reminders, and I'm not so great at that either. You said something before. You can only accomplish 5 things in a day. Is it true that we're not, and everybody, not just somebody with ADHD, everybody can't really multitask? I'm hearing more and
No,
more research about that.
no, we don't multitask. We time slice.
And not just ADHD. You're in general saying.
Everybody, right?
Oh, right.
So what's the difference between different people is how fast they can switch from one task to the next. So the problem with ADHD people, because they don't have that whiteboard that tracks their tasks, they have trouble going back. For example, I have a woman who's a programmer, and she would have frustration because if she got interrupted in the middle of programming one of her programs, she'd have to start all at the beginning again and track through it again to figure out where she left off. Now, a person who's good at task switching would have that whiteboard in their brain and know exactly where they left off. So when they came back, they could start right where they left off and they wouldn't lose that time of getting back into the task. So really what the overhead of quote multitasking is the time it takes to come out of and go into each one of those tasks. And some people have neurologic basis. They can switch back and forth easier than other people, but they're never really attending 2 things at one time.
Yeah. And I believe in the last research that I read that guys are worse at multitasking than women. Not to say that they can do it much better. But we try to. I try. I got 5 different things going on all at once. Is it really efficient? No, it's not. It's just, I guess it's more of a priority thing. This one takes priority, but this one is near it. I might have to address that at one time. What does it all lead to? Stress. You're just stressing yourself out trying to do all these different things all at once. When you work with somebody, Roger, that has ADHD, what levels do you attack? Is it we start with the priorities that they need to address, or most people with ADHD have a lot of the same challenges?
ADHD is just a convention. So no 2 people present exactly the same. There's some themes, but for the most part, because of their life situation, it's going to present a little differently. The first thing I always do is I assess how are they doing with emotional regulation? Because like you said, stress is a problem. If you've been missing commitments and having trouble getting things done and trying to function in a neurotypical world, you're probably pretty highly stressed, right? Mm-hmm. And the problem is the more stress you have, the less you can attend, the less you are motivated, and it impacts everything else. But the good thing there is that with 4 to 8 weeks of work, we can dramatically improve your ability to focus, attend, and make commitments, because we can get your stress levels down and really help you with your emotional regulation. So that gives you access to your full capacity, which is diminished by stress. So that's the first thing I tackle. And then the second thing I work with them, of course, is their most immediate problem, because when they show up, they're usually showing up because they need to pass the bar exam, or they need to do something, right, that they're struggling with. Or in the case of like some of my professionals, they just get to a point where they say, I want to get rid of some of these compensating mechanisms I've put in place because they're, like you said, inefficiently and costing. And then we'll tackle those. Invariably, because time management is a problem just for most people, but particularly for ADHD people, we get them to the point where they actually do a calendar. Very few of them are willing or want to do one, but it's without having that outside tool, the chances of them succeeding are pretty slim.
A lot of this, I have to tell you, as I scan my mind for people that have ADHD, or I suspect they might, it's all coming clear. It really is. Even the person that I referred to that forgot that she had to pick up her daughter at a friend's house. We get together, we do fun things together, and I never know what we're doing. I'm a planner, like Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday, whatever it might be. And I never know. It's like, what's going on? And it could be the same days anyway, but sometimes it doesn't work that way. And I don't believe she's diagnosed with it, but she does have focus challenges. So may have, ADHD.
Now here is where it's a strength. It's commonly, I've heard the term used, Buddha syndrome, right? If you have this feature, you're never going to have anticipatory anxiety. So you don't plan ahead, but you're not expecting disaster ahead either.
Okay.
So you're always in the moment. The most extreme example I have of this myself, I was a professional bike rider, and I was training for a bike race. I came down a big hill, 90-degree turn. I said, I bet you I could do this at 25. I make the turn at 25, all good. I go around 8 miles, come back the next lap. So I bet you I could do this at 27. Come down the hill, make the right-hand turn at 27. I made it. Came around another 8 miles. Now I had all this time to think of it, never thought of it. Came down the hill at 30, tore the tire right off, went flying across 2 lanes of traffic. I'm laying on my back and I'm thinking, why didn't once it occur to me what was going to happen in the future, right?
Wow.
So you'll find that a lot of risk taking with ADHD people, simply they don't anticipate consequences any more than the rewards, which can be a strength. You'll find that a lot of entrepreneurs have ADHD and they're able not to fetter their minds with all the fear of anticipatory anxiety. But what they do have is conditioned anxiety. Like I had a young guy who, at the smell of a marker, he would almost panic. It wasn't the assignment that would create the anticipatory anxiety. For him, it is associated with teacher putting the assignment on the board with the smell of the marker and failure, and he could feel that right in the moment. So it's funny how this nearsightedness of only dealing with the present can be both a strength and a weakness.
Wow. Again, lots of stuff coming clear here. And the person I was referring to does think about the future. So maybe she just has anxiety, not ADHD, or doesn't make plans because she fears what could happen with the plans.
Yeah, maybe. But also, again, the real trick with ADHD is, it's you just don't have the emotional connection to it. So in other words, you may know you need to pick up your daughter, right? Intellectually, you got to call. Okay, yeah, I got to pick her up. But it never registers.
Oh.
It never registers, I got to do something else, right? They know it, but they don't feel it. They don't at that moment have that pinch that says, what am I giving up this afternoon so I could go get my daughter, right?
Yes.
They don't have that connection. So they know something, they just don't feel it. It doesn't register.
Thank you for saying that. We're just about out of time, but that just came clear, because in that situation, somebody would say, logistically, got to pick him up at 3 o'clock, got to pick him up at 3 o'clock. Somebody without ADHD, correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm just trying to navigate through this. Somebody without ADHD would say, got to pick him up at 3 o'clock, because if I don't pick him up at 3 o'clock, they're going to be stranded, and I would feel bad that they're stuck there. And somebody with ADHD is not making that connection at that time. It's not that they don't have empathy. It's just not happening at that moment.
Exactly.
And that's where the disconnect is.
Because they can't connect with that what's going to happen at 3 p.m. if they're not there. In other words, the person having the empathy or the feeling of the consequences can literally project to that 3 p.m. and not showing up. Whereas this person doesn't do that. They just know, yeah, I got to pick up the kid at 3, but they don't feel it.
They don't feel it. Wow. That's all I can say. Now it's extremely clear. You've given us a lot to think about and some amazing insight into what those who struggle with ADHD go through. I really, really mean that. How do we find you, Roger? If somebody is dealing with ADHD, suspect they may have it, or maybe it's somebody that they're connected to and wants to help, how do we find you?
You find me at Dr. Lavine, and that's spelled out DoctorLA, not ELAVINE.com, drlavine.com. And just to remind people, if they want that video on how to manage a calendar, they could go to that website, request it from the website. I'll be glad to send a link. Amazing.
Excellent stuff today, and so important with more and more people being diagnosed and trying to navigate through all of this. But now it's a lot clearer what's going on in somebody's mind, and I appreciate that, Roger. Thanks for being with us.
Have a great day, Steve.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.